Hello, my name is Max, and today I'll be talking about the coral bleaching in the Great Barrier Reef. I picked this topic because it's honestly one of the biggest environmental problems happening in the oceania right now, and it just shows how much climate change has affected its real ecosystem. I'll also be showing how it's affecting the people and the environment throughout this presentation, and why that is. First off, let's start to understand where the Great Barrier Reef actually is. It sits northeast off the coast of Queensland, Australia, stretching around about 1,430 miles long, the shoreline, making it the largest coral reef system in the world. You can even see it from outer space. The reef is located in a tropical climate, meaning it has really only 2 seasons instead of your normal 4. The summers are hot and humid, usually in the high 80s, while the winters are dry and warm, generally in the high 60s. The ocean temperatures here stay pretty consistent, ranging from about 75 to 84 degrees Fahrenheit all year, which is part of the reason why the reef supports so much biodiversity, but also makes sense to how sensitive it is to slight changes in water temperatures. Next, we have what is coral bleaching. And coral bleaching basically comes down to how coral get their energy. Coral rely on tiny algae called zooxanthellae, which live inside their tissue and provide them with most of their food and their color. When the ocean gets too warm, the coral get stressed and expel these zooxanthellae. This is like losing their entire food supply at once. When that happens, the coral turn white like a skeleton, which is what we call bleaching. So why is the Great Barrier Reef bleaching so heavily right now? Well, first off, this isn't just a local issue. About 84% of the world's coral reefs are currently dealing with bleaching level heat stress. This reef is just one of the most visible examples. The Great Barrier Reef sits in shallow, warm tropical waters all year, and shallow water heats up much faster than deeper parts of the ocean. On top of that, the oceans absorb around 90% of all the excess heat caused by global warming. So even if the air doesn't seem super hot, the water can be heating up dramatically. Since around 2016, the region has been hit with stronger and more frequent marine heat waves, and these heat waves stick around long enough to really damage the coral. Another factor is that Australia is a major coal exporter, and its emissions contribute to the warming trend that's stressing the reef. So when you put all these factors together, the global warming, the heat waves, the shallow waters, and regional emissions, you get repeated bleaching events happening more often with less time for recovery. The impacts of coral bleaching go way beyond just the coral itself. The Great Barrier Reef is one of the most biodiverse places on the planet, supporting over 9,000 marine species. Everything from fish, sharks, sea turtles. It really depends on how healthy the coral are and what shelter they have. When bleaching happens, the coral lose their color, but more importantly, they lose their ability to survive. That leads to habitat loss, which then causes fish populations to drop, and that can eventually trigger major ecosystem collapses. So it's a chain reaction that affects the entire food web. There is also a huge economic impact as well. Because the reef is one of Australia's biggest tourist attractions, tourism connected to the reef brings in billions of dollars every year and supports a ton of local jobs. So when the reef suffers, coastal communities feel it immediately. And finally, the reef has deep cultural significance for indigenous communities who have long lived this coastline for thousands of years. It's tied to their traditions, identity, and relationship with the ocean. So bleaching affects not just the nature, but culture and livelihoods as well. When we look at the bleaching in the Great Barrier Reef, it's not just an isolated problem. It's basically a reflection of what's happening to the entire planet. Coral reefs react really quickly to temperature shifts. So when they start bleaching this often, it's like an early warning system telling us the climate is way out of balance. One important thing to understand is that the local emission cuts alone aren't enough. Australia reducing its carbon output helps, but bleaching is tied to global temperature rise. Even if Australia cleaned up everything tomorrow, the reef would still be at risk unless the rest of the world lowers emissions too. So the takeaway here is that coral bleaching isn't just a local environmental issue, it's a global systems problem. The reef is showing us bigger trends, and honestly, it's one of the clearest indicators we have of how fast climate is changing. It's not over though. There are some possible solutions. Looking at what we can actually do moving forward, Australia has to make some big shifts. First, getting to 100% renewable energy by 2030 is basically a non negotiable if we want to slow down ocean warming. That also means stopping any new coal, oil, or gas projects because expanding fossil fuels just makes the bleaching problem worse. On the local level, improving water quality is huge. Reducing runoff, cutting back pollution, and restoring coastal wetlands all help coral survive stress events. We also need active restoration. Things like coral reseeding and assisted recovery methods can boost how fast damaged sections can bounce back. One of the interesting solutions are some researchers are printing some artificial reef structures that copy the shape and texture of natural coral. These give coral larvae a place to attach and grow to, and they help stabilize areas that have been totally wiped out. It's not a full replacement for the real reef, but it's a legit tool to support recovery while the climate side catches up. Overall, coral bleaching in the Great Barrier Reef is a major environmental crisis that affects ecosystems, people, and the economy. It's driven by climate change, and the impacts are happening right now. The future of reefs depend on the choices we make today about energy emissions. These are the sources I used, and that is all. Thank you.